Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie Jessica.
So if you've made it this far, congratulations. This is our last Romance 101 video, and we are going to have a dark progression video for you today. So congratulations. After you finish this one, you get to graduate. So class is in session. Let's talk about dark romance. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Remember, we give away free books on this channel, and you really want to be a part of that. So hit that subscribe button and follow us on Instagram where you get extra entries, and all of that is linked down below. So, Mandy, let's talk about dark.
All right.
So we're going to do this as a dark progression, which means we're going to start with things that are slightly less dark and then get darker as we go. But dark is very subjective to the reader. What I find dark, you might find just gray, which honestly, that's probably going to be flipped the other way because I read a lot of dark. So there's a lot of things that are dark that I read, and I'm like, okay. Where somebody else will find that extremely dark and disturbing. So it just depends on how long you've been reading dark or when you get into it. But do we have a definition for dark?
Dark romance is a subgenre of romance that explores themes of power dynamics, dominance, and submission in relationships. Unlike traditional romance novels, dark romance often features taboo or controversial subject matter such as non-consensual sex, forced captivity, or extreme violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So you do have a lot of non-consent or straight up dub-con definitely, but there's a lot of non-con, and the attack that can happen between somebody else and the hero or heroine, or it can be between the hero and the heroine, which makes them really an anti-hero. But we deal with a lot of heavier, sensitive subject where you really have to check the trigger warnings. This is where you get a book that has a trigger warning list that's a mile long. And so you definitely need to check trigger warnings on these books. But and these are one of those types of books that if you can't handle what's in it, that's fine. And it's okay to put the book down and be like, yeah, that's not for me, and step away. Because you're just going to hurt yourself in the end. So definitely know what you can and can't handle before you go into a book like this.
Yes.
You're spacing again.
No. Okay. So the way we're going to do this video is we're going to start with like lighter dark for if you're like, oh, maybe I want to try this. We'll suggest some books like that, and it's going to be a dark progression. So our first recommendations will be more on the lighter scale, and then we'll get to the dark. So on the lighter scale, we would maybe have some dark themes, but the hero and heroine wouldn't directly be involved in that together. It would be like something has happened that has those dark themes, but our hero is not the reason those dark themes are happening, would be where we're going to start. And then as we progress, the hero is going to have more to do with that. Or it's going to be, yeah.
And I also think too, knowing what books that we both have, that Mandy's, I'm going to guarantee, are a lighter dark than my dark. For the most part. There's some as we get going in that get darker. But I know what your first book is compared to my first book. And I think if you are very, very new and you're very hesitant, I would stick with Mandy's first rec before you jump into my first rec, if they interest you at all. Because I think knowing what you have for your first, and knowing what I have for my first, I still think that your first is lighter than my first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go first then.
Okay, then you go first. All right.
Okay. So my first book is going to be Tide by Carrie Ann Cole. This is book 2 in the All Torn Up series, but it is a complete standalone. We see Tyler a little bit in some of the other books, but in this book, like, there's nothing that happens in the other books that you are going to be missing out on if you haven't read them. So this is about Tyler, who is a recluse. He lives in the woods off the grid, and he doesn't talk. Like, he has completely put himself in solitude. He does still get involved in the animal rescue, but he's like literally like his own person, doesn't have really relationships anymore. And people in town are kind of scared of him because he is so, what do I say? I mean, he's just different because he lives out in the woods. He doesn't talk to anybody. So people are weary of him. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. So Holly was kidnapped when she was 5, and she has been held prisoner for 11 years by obviously a very nice man who has kept her like in this underground bunker out in the woods. And one day, Tyler happens to discover this and he kills her captor and frees her. So Holly is immediately like just drawn to him because he saved her. He is like her prince in shining armor. And Tyler does not feel like a prince in shining armor at all. And so this is Holly really wanting to have some sort of more connection with Tyler, and Tyler trying to figure out his feelings for Holly, as well as dealing with the things that have happened to him that have led him to choose this life of solitude and living out like as a hermit, basically out in the woods, and how all that's going to work out. The dark themes come from the fact that she has been kidnapped, she's held, and we do read a little bit about that time and that abuse that happens to her. So that's where kind of those dark elements come from. And then there's some things in Tyler's past that kind of add to the dark elements. But his relationship with her and her relationship with him, that is not the dark part of the book. That's why this would be on the lighter side of dark. Highly recommend. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not looking to try dark, still read this. Very good.
Okay, so my first book takes place in Alaska. And this takes place in the wilderness in Alaska. And this is the second in a 3-book series, but they can all be read as standalones. I think all of them should be read. I want to say that these books have like less than 200 reviews for each book because they're total hidden gems, but they're just not as well known. So the first book that I have is Wildling, and this is by Lynn Burke. So this is about Sage. She meets a guy. So she lives in this tiny little remote town in Alaska, and she meets a guy who is, he lives in the bush and he flies back and forth certain times throughout the year, you know, in the spring and in the fall to get the things that they need for the winter. And so he flies in just before winter, and she'd met him in the spring, or she'd met him prior when he'd been in last time. And he's definitely older than her. His name is Callan, and he's like, let's get married. I don't have time to court. I don't have time to woo. Let's get married. Now she lives in a really crummy home situation, and so she agrees to this. She's pretty neglected. She's very young. He is definitely older. She marries him, and they she's still a virgin that first night that they're together. And she realizes after she marries him, they get ready to fly out the next morning, that night, like, things are not, he might not be the person that he has perceived him, like he's put out there, right, that she's perceived him to be. And so the next day they fly out to his cabin, and that's where she meets his son Flynn, who is grown. He's like a year or two older than her. And she learns pretty quickly that Callan is not the person she thought he was. He's extremely abusive, verbally and physically, not only to her, but to Flynn as well. And then as the story starts to progress, she and Flynn start to become more attracted to each other. They're closer in age. He's kind to her. And so this story is ultimately about Sage and Flynn, because Callan becomes your bad guy in this book. So that the themes within this book, it's dark because of the abuse that Sage endures, Sage and Flynn, at the hands of Callan, who is her husband. So you've also got that where it's technically cheating because she develops a relationship with her stepson who is older than her. And they're stuck out here. They're stuck in the wilderness with this abusive man. So
I have this book actually on my Kindle.
No, it's so good. And it's one of those where you get started and you're like, I don't know. Like there's sometimes when there's books where you really have to like force yourself to get into or keep reading. You are immersed immediately and just sucked into this book from the get-go. So okay, so what's your next book?
Okay, my next book is definitely labeled as dark, but to me, I just feel like he's just fantastic.
Yes, I
Like
know which book.
seriously, these women have got to stop complaining when these guys just try and just to make their lives better.
I'm telling you. Okay.
That's a joke.
Yes, that was a joke. Yeah. She was joking. Yeah.
All right. So my next book, I'm going to talk about The Pucking Wrong Guy by C.R. Jane, but you could definitely start with The Pucking Wrong Number by C.R. Jane. Pucking Wrong Number is Lincoln. We meet him, and then Ari is like his best friend. They're on the same hockey team. And then, so this is Ari's book, The Pucking Wrong Guy. Ari, I've heard people say that Ari makes Lincoln look like a saint. I don't know if I'd go that far because they're just a little different, but definitely that obsessive, darker hero. But our heroes in these two stories are not doing anything. Oh, how do I describe this? So, their dark tendencies are to basically try to woo their women and get what they want. They are not doing um like horrific mean things to them,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So in The Pecking Run Guy, we have Ari, who has been in, like, him and Blake is our female heroine. They meet when they are kids in a group home, and then Blake is adopted, and Ari kind of just spends the rest of his time like wishing he could find her. And one day he's driving and he sees her picture on a billboard because she's a model. She has left her adopted family and moved clear across the country, like literally clear across the country to LA to try and get away from that family and their lifestyle and to make it on her own. Ari then goes to some extreme lengths to make sure he is put into Blake's orbit so that they can be destined to be together. And just like Lincoln, he does some pretty crazy things to make sure their relationship works out. I love this. Yes, it's dark. Yes, it's obsessive heroes. There's hockey. I mean, it is just fantastic. There's also humor in it. We also have pierced heroes in this series. Love it. Love it. So
Mm-hmm.
this is, I feel, a fairly safe way to feel if like darker romance might be your thing, because nothing really horrific is happening on page.
Yeah, and
Like
it's
morally gray.
yes.
Our heroes are morally gray, but they truly have the best interest of their women.
Mm-hmm.
It's
They
just
do
how they go
things.
about achieving
They
that.
they
It's the
they do
morally
things that
gray,
we're
questionable part.
yeah. They do things. Yeah, they do things that we're going to in everyday life. We would call the cops. I mean, let's face it. They do some
Yes.
extremely questionable things. But I know I haven't read that when I read the first one, which is The Pucking Wrong Number. I remember reading it going, I know this is supposed to be dark, and I know that he's supposed to be this crazy, obsessive, possessive type guy. But there were certain elements, it just felt a little more lighthearted. It wasn't
Mhm.
as dark as it could be. It was great. But the way they go about doing things, like Mandy said, it's not vindictive and it's manipulative, yes, but
Oh,
for
definitely.
the betterment of the heroine, typically. And we joke about it, but really it's not. It could get so much worse. It really could. So the book that I have next is kind of along the same lines, somewhat, and that is King by S.J. Tilley. So this is the second book in her her Alliance series. You can read these as standalones, and that's totally fine. I love, so far I've only read King, and the first one is Nero. I loved King way more than Nero, but this is about Savannah and King. So these guys are not technically mafia. They're crime bosses, but they're not technically mafia. So Savannah has been dating this guy for a while now. She has only kind of made out with him. She really hasn't slept with him. She hasn't slept with him. But she and him are going on a date. I think this is the third date, and she's trying to decide whether or not she's going to cut this guy loose. And so she takes him with her. They're going to go out on this date, and they go to her friend's house before the date. I'm going to put it over here because she wants to. Her friend has just had surgery, and she's going to take this macaroni and cheese casserole thing to her friend who can't cook for herself. When she and the date arrive, there are already people at the house, and so these are the friends that she's never met before. So she walks into the house and she's being introduced to these friends. And then her date comes in behind her. And one of the friends kind of gasps and says, what are you doing here? Because the guy who came in, she's talking to the guy, is this friend's husband. So the friends that are there is King and his sister. So this guy that she's been dating, that Savannah's been dating, is married to this friend of a friend that she has at the house. And that's where this book starts off. Now, King, being ticked off that his brother-in-law has been cheating on his sister, decides that night that he is going to take matters into his own hands, and he is going to take care of the brother-in-law, because how dare he do those things to his sister. And then you have Savannah, who goes back to this date's house because she left her car keys there because she rode with him and she needs her car keys to get home, stumbles across the scene of when King is taking care of his brother-in-law. So King decides that he is going to take her home with him and force her to marry him in order to keep her safe. I love their story so much. So yes, it's dark in the sense that there is murder on page. Kind of. And it's dark in the sense that he forces her to marry him, but he really is doing it for her own good. Really. So he's just trying to protect her. He is a good husband. So yes, it's dark in those sense, and it's still not dark. So
Your justifications are a little
yeah, I know, guys. Don't use this video for relationship advice, whatever you do.
I think that, we talked about always checking your triggers when you're looking at dark books if you are concerned that you could have some triggers. I think it's really important to know that when you read dark romance or forbidden romance, that the things that you are going to read, you're not going to be okay with these things in real life. And so you just have to be like, okay, in this fictional world, this is fine. Just how people read like Stephen King. If those things are happening in real life, people would not be okay with that. They would not be, enjoying the entertainment of it. So it's very different when you're reading about it fictional, like a fictional story.
Yes.
So, but dark may not be for you, and that is okay. I read all across the board. And sometimes dark is like the mood I'm in, and then sometimes I want a good old rom-com. But it's just, one of those things. Yep. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. Make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So my next one really starts to explore some much deeper dark themes that could possibly maybe even give you nightmares if you're that type of person. So here we go.
Okay.
Okay. So my next book is called Cruel Idols by Sorsha Black. This is about Sadie, who is really kind of down on her luck, and she hears that her favorite author is staying outside of town at this lake, like he has lakefront property. So she decides to ride her bike because, again, down on her luck, doesn't have a running car. So she rides her bike way out there to where he supposedly is staying. And she's like, her hope is that she'll just be able to see him and get his autograph and go on her way. So she gets there and doesn't see anybody. So she decides to kind of walk around the back of the house. And all of a sudden, Vandal, the author, comes flying out and freaks out on her, accuses her of being there to try and steal his work, and basically refuses to let her go because he is getting ready to publish this new book at the end of summer, and he's convinced that she must have seen something, she was going to leak it, and so he does not want her to leave his sight. And through a roundabout way, she ends up agreeing to stay there because she doesn't really have somewhere to live. Like there's something wrong with her apartment. I can't remember exactly what it was. So that's why she's a little more willing to stay. So she agrees to stay with him. And she also really wants to be a writer. And so they spend a lot of time writing. And then he has this friend, Zero, that's his name, who's a fellow writer, come over. And so the three of them do some writing. And she is having some problems with some of the plot that's happening in her book. And Vandal and Zero, this is like a MMF story, or maybe it's MFM. Anyway, she willingly allows these things to happen, so she is submerged and able to get into her character's mind. But they tie her up, stick her in a dark, cold basement. They force, but again, she's willing, themselves on her. They keep her like, I mean, it gets very dark and crazy in this book with the things that are happening, and lines start to get blurred about like what is okay and what is not, what is consensual, what is not, that sort of thing. And it's really quite wild and pretty dark.
Okay. Okay. I love those kinds of books. That's just my jam, apparently.
You should have read this one.
I should have. I just haven't yet. There's so many dark books. So little time.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry.
So the next book that I have, I love this author, especially for her dark stuff. She has darker that I've read, but this was one of my first books from her, and it really got me into some of the dark stuff, and that is The Maiden by Celia Aaron. This is a trilogy. There are 3 books, and all 3 books follow the story of Delilah, and Delilah has joined Heavenly Ministries. So this is a cult situation. Her sister had joined it a year before, and her sister mysteriously died. And so she's trying to find out what happened to her sister. She knows that she's walking into a cult when she does this. And so when she goes to Heavenly Ministries, she is there as what they call a maiden. And the maidens have to be trained to then be given to a member of the ministry as like technically like a wife. But while they're being trained, they go through these horrific, crazy things every day to try to train them for what will be expected of them. And at night, they're given to one of the leaders to be like a shepherd. They're considered like a shepherd, to like watch them and make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. And these leaders that are assigned to each one of these women has to keep them intact. They can do whatever they want to them as long as they don't pop a cherry, for lack of a better term. As long as they don't take their virginity, they can do whatever they want to them, which means there's a few other holes to use. And she is assigned to the prophet's son, who is Adam. And this is what happens with all of that. Now, there is so much happening in these books. These are dark. These ones give you a dark, creepy feeling from day one of reading the book. And I think it's because a lot of it is because it takes place in a cult. There are things that are happening to these girls that they're brainwashed to believe that they want to happen. Now, we have Delilah, who knows that these things should not be happening, but she is doing this in order to figure out what happened to her sister. But I think because when you're walking into this book and you're going into it knowing that these people believe that this is how that they should live, and they're willingly giving these things up to these people, and they're being abused on a daily basis by multiple people. This one definitely feels dark from the get-go, but it is so good. This series is just, you just immerse yourself into this world. And I remember having like severe anxiety while reading this book, like, what's going to happen next? How are they going to fix this? Like the prophet, the leader of the group, is crazy. Like, how does this get fixed? I really want to do a reread of this one. Okay. So, okay.
Okay, so next I have a book that is definitely pretty dark. It's a little bit more unique in the dark element though, because the heroine and the hero are thrown together into a very dark situation where neither one of them are the catalyst of what's happening. Where usually in dark romance, one of them is the catalyst of it, but this is happening to both of them. And it has some pretty lasting impacts. So let me tell you about it. It's a popular one, but this is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. Loved this. This was actually one of, I think, the first dark romances that I read because somebody told me to. So this was definitely, and by somebody I mean Jessica. This was a pretty like deep dive into it, and I was a little uncomfortable because I was like, oh, I don't like reading about this kind of stuff, but it's such a good story. So we have Cora and Dean. Dean is Cora's sister's long-term boyfriend. And I don't know if we ever really know why they haven't moved their relationship forward in the story. Because I think they've been together for like 10 or 15 years. And Cora and Dean do not get along. They constantly pull pranks on each other, but not like haha pranks. Like some of them are pretty mean. And it is her sister's birthday party. And they go out to this club, have a lot of fun. And Cora is still there. And Dean and her sister have gone home. And all of a sudden, her wallet's missing. And so she ends up calling her sister for a ride home. Her sister doesn't answer. Dean does. And Dean's like, I'm on my way. So Dean comes to pick her up. He picks her up. And then they are pulled over. And the next thing she knows, she is waking up in a basement, shackled in chains. And next to her is Dean in chains. And they are kept in this basement. Their abductor forces them to do some pretty horrific things. And this is their survival story. It's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's good though.
It's very good. But it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
So check triggers. I know we say that a lot, but
well, they should on all these books, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta cover our bases. Check those triggers.
But I love Jennifer Hartman. She's a good author.
Yeah, she is. Speaking of a good author who unfortunately has passed away and will not be writing anymore, but you know, at least we have the works that she did do. That brings us to our next book, which is the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. So these S.T. Abbey also wrote under C.M. Owens, but S.T. Abbey, this series, these 5 books this is the bind up of the 5 books, but they're the only thing that she wrote under S.T. Abbey before she passed away. But there are other books under C.M. Owens. But this series, they're very short 5 books. All of them have audio now. When I read this, the audio was just starting to come out. So I think all the audio is out now, and the audio is great as well. So definitely you get through them pretty quickly, and they're really, really good. But this is the story of Lana and Logan. Lana has had severe trauma. Because of that trauma, she is getting revenge on those who inflicted that trauma onto her and those she loved. And so she is a female serial killer. And then you have Logan, who is the FBI agent who is trying to find her. They meet under interesting circumstances, and they hit it off immediately. She knows who he is. That's not why she's in a relationship with him. She's in a relationship with him because she's truly has feelings for him. But he doesn't know who she is. They think that the person who is doing these murders is male. And he doesn't realize that the person that he is with could be the one that is doing all of this stuff. When this book was first put out there as an option at one point, I was like, I don't want to read about a female serial killer. It's like one thing when the guy is like the morally gray or pitch black character, but to me it was another thing when it was the woman. But when I tell you I fell in love with the series from the first book, oh my gosh, I fell in love with it. I'm like, why didn't I read this sooner? There's a reason why this is as popular as it is. So if you've been putting this one off, don't go read it. But this one obviously deals with a lot of dark things. We see a lot of traumatic things happen to our heroine that should never happen to anybody at any age. So again, triggers, the list is a mile long, but this series is just, I read it, I would be saying May. I still think about it all the time. I really wish we would have been able to get more books by C.M. Owens in this world, in this S.T. Abbey world, because she was such an amazing author, and to lose her early was, that sucks. So, hi.
Hi. Okay, you ready for my last dark?
Is it your last dark already? We are. Yeah, you started first. Yes, I guess we are. So this should be your darkest one, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is called Empathy by Kerr Dookie. It is a 4-book series, and you need to read them in order. So, oh gosh. Empathy is about Melody, Blake, and Ryan. Blake is a police detective, has a little side business going on. And he goes to follow out what he was paid to do, which he's a hitman. So he's paid to go take out some people, and he goes to do that. He's never felt really connection to people, and empathy is not something he possesses. And then he sees these green eyes looking at him, and he can't do it. So he doesn't kill her. He kills some other people, but he leaves her, which is a huge risk for him. And, he's not just a hitman because he's also a detective. And so a lot is on the line for him in this situation. This book has a lot of twists and turns. There is on page, like, detailed killing. It is, it is very dark, very twisted, very twisted.
Yeah.
Very dark. But I really can't tell you anything beyond that because there's twists that happen, lots of things. And yeah, it's really good if you're willing to take the adventure.
Okay. That's another one I need to read. So my last book, I don't think Mandy's going to be surprised with this book. Now, is this the darkest thing I've ever read? No. I read one this last week that was even darker. But is this going to be a favorite of the year? Yes. Yes, it will. And if you can handle this one, then you can handle the other dark books that I love, and we can talk about that if you want more. But what do you think it is?
I'm thinking it's Hitched.
No.
No? Oh, I figured Lauren Beale would make an appearance.
Lauren Beale should be on this list, but when we're only choosing 5, I was like, Lauren Beale is an extremely good dark author, and she writes some dark stuff. This one, it creeps me out because it's based off Jareth from The Labyrinth, and The Labyrinth, I know that there's Muppets in it, but The Labyrinth creeped me out as a kid, which is why this creeps me out now, but in a good way. So let's talk.
We should also add to our dark video that most of your MC romances and your mafia romances are going to have some dark elements.
Yeah, I was surprised that Neva Altai wasn't listed as one of the earlier ones for you, because Neva Altais are all technically dark, but because of her humor, they don't feel dark.
I wanted to I felt like we already had a mafia video. We have an MC video. So I wanted to try and, steer that way. But I feel like when you're in the mafia world, you're expecting dark. When you're in an MC world, you're expecting there to be dark elements. And so the feel in those books is different than the feel in these books.
Yes,
I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
All
right. So let's talk about Fear Me, Love Me by Lilith Vincent. So this is the story of Tyrant and Vivian. So like I said before, this is based off the movie, I think it was in the 80s, the movie The Labyrinth came out. It creeped me out. I was little. Bowie creeped me out the way it just all creeped me out. So knowing that this is based off of that, then it was immediately going to creep me out. So Tyrant is our Jareth character. And so this book is told, it's in the present. It starts out in the present. And when you're first reading it, you're like, am I missing something? Because they've already met and they have a relationship, but then it bounces back to the past. And then we go back forward again. So it kind of, the middle of the book has the past, and she wrote it that way for a reason. But Tyrant and Vivian met about a year prior. Vivian's dad owed Tyrant a lot of money. Now Tyrant runs the town. He is this cruel, crazy dude. And when her dad owed him money that he couldn't pay. And so he took her half brother, who was an infant, as collateral and took him home. And instead of parents going after their child because the parents are piss poor parents, Vivian finds out that her baby brother has been taken. And so she goes to Tyrant and is like, I want my brother. And he's like, what? You know, there, you got to get through my maze. But he realizes that he likes her a lot. He just becomes obsessed with her. And so after she gets the brother back and stuff, then the obsession begins. And then the story goes from there. She is a very neglected character. Her father was a horrible dad. Her mom was a horrible mom. Her stepmom is a bitch. And all she wants to do is protect her brother. And all Tyrant wants to do is marry her, get her pregnant, and keep the brother. Because he's crazy. Like, should be in a mental ward, crazy. But he's crazy for her. So this is extremely dark. There is murder on page. There is crazy stuff that happens, but dang it, I was here for it. So that is as dark. I mean, that's not as dark as it gets. It can get way darker, and there's a lot of more darker out there, but that is as dark as we're gonna get.
Okay.
So yay.
I have some little tiny something to add.
Okay.
If you are thinking that you would like to try something dark, but maybe like really lightly dark, I was gonna put these on here on my list, and Jessica was like, no, that's more romantic suspense. But these do have a little bit of a darker element. So if you're like, I want something a little bit suspenseful with a little bit of dark, but I don't want to read dark, you could read, what was it? Fractured Sky by Catherine Cowles. Definitely has some darker things happening to some of the characters, but it's more romantic suspense. And then you could also read Unravel. Definitely has some darker themes, but it's also a lot, I mean, lighter, but it's still romantic suspense, darker elements.
Unravel is written by Calla Reed.
Yes, I didn't say that. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all good.
Just wanted to throw those two out there.
Yeah.
I had a really hard time narrowing my list down.
Oh, I had a long list, but my list was so long because I read dark. So I was trying to figure out, like, what haven't we talked about? How do I, because my thing of when we were like, we need to do it as a progression where it's lighter to darker, all mine were just like pitch black. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't work. So
no, I thought your progression was very done well.
I progressed. I did. It was very difficult for me, but I progressed. So yes.
That's why I took off like Mafia and MC. That helped me narrow it down. But I was really struggling this morning. I was like, I think I was like, I have 9.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you said. I was like, wait. Tell me what you got. So, all right, guys. Well, congratulations. You've graduated from Romance 101, or at least for the first class, Romance 101 2023. So yay for you. You
we
made
should
it
have
this far.
confetti to throw.
We should have pulled out our old graduation caps.
I know where mine is.
I know mine's right here in my hope chest, but I'd had to dig for it. So it's under my wedding dress, I'm sure. So yeah. All right, guys. So that's what we have. You made it. You did it. Yay! But Mandy's still going to give you some homework.
Yes, I am. So, couple of things. Let us know. What do you like? Do you like reading dark? If so, are any of these books ones that you've read or you plan to read? And then how did you like Romance School 101? Is there any topic that you wish that we would have covered that we haven't? Let us know, and we can always do another video where we add on some things, because we really just wanted to make this fun, but yet educational on your romance journey and give you places to start. Because sometimes when we do rec videos, we're just thinking of the books that have stood out to us, and not necessarily like, if I was brand new to this, where would I want to start type thing. Exactly. So that is your homework. I hope you enjoyed Romance School 101. Congratulations on graduating. Make sure you check back on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for new videos from us.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.